Jaya Jaya Sri Guru Prema Kalapataro Adabhuta Jako Prakash Adabhuta Jako Prakash Iya Agyan Timira Borogyan Suchandra Kirane Koruna Suchandra Kirane Koruna Jaya Jaya Sri Guru Prema Kalapataru Adabhuta Jako Paraka Adabhuta Jako Parakash Iha Ihalo Chana Nandadham Iha Lochana Nandadham Ajachita Moheno Patita Heri Jo Pahun Jachi Devalo Harina Jachi Devalo Harina Jaya Jaya Sri Guru Prema Kalapataru Adabhuta Jako Parakash Adabhuta Jako Parakash Anduramati Agati Satataya Satamati Duramati Agati Satataya Satamati Nahi ko sukriti lavale Nahi sukriti lavale So Vrindavana Jugala Bhajana Dhana Shri Vrindavana Jugala Bhajana Dhana Mohe Koralo Upadesh Mohe Korolo Upadesh Jaya Jaya Sri Guru Prema Kalapataru Adabhuta Jako Parakash Adabhuta Jako Parakash Niramala Gaura Prema Rasa Sinchane Niramala Gaura Prema Rasa Sinchane Puralo Sabha Monerayam So Charanam Buje Rati Nahi Ho Alone Rovato Vaishnavadas, Rovato Vaishnavadas. Jaya Jaya Sri Guru Prema Kalapataru Adabhuta Jako Parakar Adabhuta Jako Parakar Adabhuta Jako Parakar. Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Nitai 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 Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Jai Jai Jasodanandana Shati Sutta Gaura Chandra Jai Jai Rohini Nandana Balarama Nityananda Jai Jai Mahavishnu Avatar Shri Advaita Chandra Jai Jai Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Khandavasi Narahari Murari Mukunda Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Rai Ramananda Jai Jai Uriya Goriya Jato Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Hayachanar Hoben Jata Gora Bhakta Vrinda Tomra Sabai Mili Korodoya Ami Ati Manda Jeno Akul Prane Gaite Pari Anitai Gauranga Gai Jeno Anitai Gauranga Janme Jame Anitai Gauranga Akul Prane Anitai Gauranga Neche Neche Anitai Gauranga Bahutuli Anitai Gauranga Akul Prane Anitai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Nitai 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 Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Nityananda Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Namasreshtham manumapi shachi putramatra swarupam rupam tasyagrajam urupurim maturim goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Prasita Kripaya Shri Guru Tanmatosmi Nindantam Pulakotkarena Vikasat Nipa Prasuna Chavin Prodvikritya Bhujadvayam Hari Hari Tyuchair Vadantam Muhu Nityantam Galadasrucha Agnijarachayai Sinchantam Urvitalam Gayantam Nijaparshadaih Parivritam Tam Gaurameva Stumaha Yasya Brahmeti Sangyam Kochidapi Nigame Yati Chinmatra Satta Pyangsho Yasyanksha Kaiswair Vibhavati Vashayanna Eva Mayam Pumanscha Ekam Yasyaiva Rupam Vilasati Parama Vyomni Narayanakyam Sa Sri Krishno Vidhattam Swayamiha Bhagavan Prema Tat Pada Bhajam Gaura Shyama Rucho Jalabi Akshnor Vilaso Savai Nrityanti Bhirashesha Madana Kala Vaidagdhya digdhatma bihi Anyonya priyata sudha parimala Stomon sada Radha Madhava Madhuri Virabitas Chittang Mama Kramyatam Guru Shastram Shraddha Ruchir Anugati Siddhir iti me Tadetat sarvam Charana Kamalam Rajatiyayo Kripa Madhvi Kena Snapita Nayana Bhojayugalo Sada Radha Krishna Asharanagati Tau Mamagati Ali Bhif Paripalita Pravalita Sanandamalokitaha Pratyashang Sumanah Falodaya Vidho Samodamamoditaha Vrindaranya Bhuvi Prakasha Madhura Sarvati Shai Sriya Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ullalasa Kalpa Drumaha Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ullalasa Kalpa Drumaha Jayati Jayati Namanandarupam Murare Viramita Nija Dharmang Dhyana Puja Diyatnam Katamapi Sakridat Muktidang Praninang Yat Paramam Amritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Paramam Amritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Paramam Amritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Radhe. Well, welcome everybody. And here we are. We are at Anuched 29, so we're moving a bit quickly here. There's all these quotations from the Bhagavatam. Each verse is getting an entire Anuched for itself, so these are going very quickly. So the effects of Priti Diminish Mukti number 10, Anuched 29. So in each one of these, the effects of Priti, so you're talking about something connected to Priti, but in other words, not directly, not saying explicitly Priti is better than Mukti, but generally speaking, saying something to the effect that having experienced Priti to this extent, or having experienced the effects of Priti, we have come to the conclusion that we do not desire or we're not interested in Mukti because it is so inferior to Priti. So we'll go back after this, when we finish, there's one more after this, then we'll go back and we'll look at we'll just go through those one more time. So here is Lokapalata Matra Lakshana Tatseva Bimana Dwara Api Aho Aha Uh, Here, this verse is spoken by Indra, so well, that's mentioned. Where is it? It's going to be mentioned. Well, it doesn't say here, but well, obviously, it's going to say that at the end. It says Mahendra Sri Nrsingham. So this takes place in the 8th chapter of the 7th cantos. This chapter contains the prayers of the gods after Hiranyakashipu has been killed by Nrsingadev. So the 8th chapter contains all those prayers, and at the conclusion of the chapter and the beginning of the next chapter, we know that the gods were not able to calm Nrsinga, whose anger had been so great on account of the way that Nrsinga was, on account of the way that Hiranyakashipu had been mistreating his son, Prahlad, who was such a great devotee of Vishnu. So now, in those prayers, one of the speakers was Indra, Mahendra. So here it says, Lokapalata Matra Lakshana Tatseva Bhimana Dwara Apyaho. So generally speaking, we make a distinction between Krishna as he exists as Bhagavan in Nitya Lila, in Goloka, in Vrindavan, and the Paramatma, who delegates responsibilities. So when we talk about, let's say, for instance, the Gunavataras, the Purushavataras, these are all related to the creation Leela. So there are two kinds of, Bhagavan is engaged in two kinds of Leela. One kind of Leela is Aishwaryamaya, and one kind of Leela is Madhuryamaya. So these two are, generally speaking, and especially in this Priti Sandarbha, we'll be talking a lot about Aishwarya and Madhurya. But here, the service, Lokapalata Matra Lakshana Tatseva Bhimana Dwara. So the demigods, we're calling them demigods. The demigod is not. Demigod is a word that is used in Western mythology as a category. It means people like Ulysses, right? So, or Hercules, rather. Hercules. So Hercules was the son of a god, Zeus, and a mortal mother. So he was a combination of the immortals and the mortals. So Zeus is considered to be uh, a god, and Hercules, I hope I'm right here, Hercules' mother, she was a mortal. And uh, so Hercules himself is called a demigod. So we don't really, the term demigod is not really a correct translation for deva. The gods is okay, but some other people, well, Babaji wrote a book recently with Rajiv Malhotra called Sanskrit Untranslatables. And one of the words that they include, as a matter of fact, it's on the front cover, is devata. So is devata, is it a god, is it an angel? Is it a spirit of some kind, some jinn? Well, these are elevated beings who have been entrusted responsibilities related to the material creation. So Indra is the king of the gods, and he is a part of this system, this worldly system. So now this is Paramatma. Okay, Paramatma Seva, serving the Paramatmas in the case of in activities. So when one engages, what is the purpose of Vishnu? So Vishnu is the god of the Sattva Guna. So he is mostly involved in maintaining the universe. So in the Gita also Krishna says why he descends into the world. So when Krishna speaks in the Gita about descending into the world, and when we think of Krishna as being an avatar or as being a representative of the forces of goodness in the world, so when we talk about Krishna engaging in helping the gods in their eternal battles with the demons or with the asuras, which is another untranslatable word, because actually demon doesn't properly mirror what is intended by the word asura. Asuras are human-like creatures who are dominated by Rajogun. And Rakshasas are demoniac creatures, or human-like creatures who are dominated by Tamogun. So one who is extremely governed by the Tamogun, that's a Rakshasa. And someone who is extremely governed by the Rajoguna, that's an Asura. And someone who is dominated by the Sattva Guna, that is a Devata, that's a Deva. Like in the Gita in the 16th chapter, Krishna calls about Daivi Sampad and Asuri Sampad. So the Daivi Sampad, the acquisitions, the psychological or personal or character acquisitions of a person in the Sattva Guna, those are called Daivi Sampad. Sampad means treasure. So the treasures of someone of someone who has a godly character. So a person who's in the Sattva Guna, he has the godly character. So the gods also, like Indra, they're also dominated by Sattva Guna. Even though, for instance, with Indra, there are so many things that he did that seem to be more characterized by Rajas than by Sattva. Nevertheless, because they're engaged in service. So here Indra, in this particular instance, Indra is saying that has the Abhiman, he identifies himself as a servant of God. But that God, what is that God? That God is the God of this world, the God of this universe. He is the creator of this universe. He is the maintainer of this universe. And ultimately, he is also the destroyer of this universe because he acts through Brahma and Shiva, who are the Gunavatars for the Rajas and Tamogun. But he himself is the Sattva Murti. You see this in the second chapter of the Bhagavatam. Sattva Rajas Tamaiti Prakritar Gunaiste. The gunas, the three gunas, right? So of the three gunas, Vishnu is said to be the Murti, the representative, the personification of the Sattva Guna, even though by nature Vishnu is transcendent to the three gunas. Vishnu has nothing to do with the material world, and yet because it's his creation, he also plays a role in its creation, maintenance, and destruction. So the gods, whether it's Brahma or Shiva or Indra or Varuna or any of the others, they're all ultimately functioning as servants of Vishnu. That's why the Indra can go to Vishnu and ask him for help, because in actual fact, they are devotees of Vishnu, and they're devotees of, but they're devotees of Vishnu in terms of his actions in relationship to the material world. So that's Paramatma Gyan. Paramatma is the God of this world. When we talk about Paramatma, we first talk about the Purusha avatars, right? So we have Mahavishnu, we have Garbhodakashai Vishnu, we have Kshirodakashai Vishnu. This is all in the aspect of where we try to understand the transcendent God, the God who is fully absorbed in himself. Right? The God who is fully absorbed in his loving adventures with his eternal devotees in his eternal world, in the world that's made according to his personal specifications, in the various different ways, in the various different forms that he wants to enjoy. But Indra and the other gods, they are all serving the function, they're acting as functionaries in this world, and they're serving God, who is the creator and maintainer and destroyer of this universe. So it's a different thing. It's also service to God. So it's also good, comparatively speaking. But now in most of the other religions in the world, we'll talk about the Abrahamic religions, they're all interested in serving God in terms of this world. They see God as an agent of action in this world, primarily. And so they want to do good deeds in order to bring satisfaction. They want to please God in this way. So it's a devotional activity. What Indra does as the king of the gods is to serve Bhagavan. And he does so in many intimate ways. Even Krishna, Bhagavan, is taking birth as his younger brother, as Vamana. We were reading about this last year in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So Indra's good fortune and Indra's devotion are not to be entirely minimized, because his position of authority within the universal bureaucracy is very elevated. So he doesn't get there by simply, climbing the ranks of the bureaucracy, like in a material, like a government office. All right, so here it says, Indra spoke of his disregard for Mukti to Nrsingadev out of the pride of service to Bhagavan as a protector of the world. So the word here is lokabhimana abhimana. So here he's calling the pride of service to Bhagavan as a protector. So the pride, his service is that of a protector of the world, or as a lokapala. So here's the verse. Pratyanitaha parama. Hey Parama. This is the vocative case here. Hey Parama. Bhavata trayata naha swabhaga daityakrantam hridaya kamalam tvad pratyabodhi kalagrastam kiyadidam ahonatha shushushatang te muktis tesham nahi bahumata narasingha parai kim. Right, so here's another similar one. So muktis tesham, so who these people are, that's being spoken of prior to that. He says that mukti tesham nahi bahumata is not thought of highly. Bahumata means thinking highly of something. So, hey Narasingha, hey Narasingha, hey Narasingha, hey Parama, aparai kim. So here you have the kim with the Tritiya Vibhakti. So it means, what's the use of? What need do we have of these other ones? Right, so mukti stesham nahi bahumata. So he doesn't think very much of mukti. So what does he think then of all the other gains of the worldly people? Obviously he doesn't. So this is again another kimuta, right? The aparai kim, the kimuta, kaimutika nyaya. So who is that? So kala grastam kiyadidamaho natha susrushatangte. So, O Supreme One, while protecting us, you have recovered your own shares of the sacrifice. That's swabhaga. So trayata, bhavata trayata naha swabhaga. So trayata, present participle, naha is the accusative. So while you were protecting us, swabhaga pratyanita. So pratyanita means recovering. So you were the swabhaga. This is a passive participle, right? Past participle. Pratyanita. That by you they were recovered, the bhagas. So what it is that even though Krishna is not directly interested in portions of the sacrifice. This is an interesting concept. The gods, when they are living on the offerings that they get from sacrifice, right? I was saying that, like that bhavayatanena taneva bhavayatanena te bhavayantu va paraskaram bhavayanta shreya evam avapsita. So you'll get the same, you feed the gods and the gods will feed you. So one who doesn't give back to the gods is and cooks, for his own self. Such a person is a thief. So when one offers to the gods, one is indirectly also offering to Bhagavan, because the gods, in this case, they are acting as representatives of Krishna. They're representatives of Bhagavan. But they're representatives of Bhagavan in terms of the material creation. That the material creation, pay it forward, is what Krishna is saying there in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He's saying that when Brahma created the gods and created this universal system of sacrifice, one performs sacrifice to the gods, and that is the way that the universal balance remains. If one simply takes without returning, sa bhunkte stena eva saha, apradaya eva, without giving back, not a good thing. So the system of the universe is that you give back. So what's happening in the universe today? What's happening in the world today? Right? In the 16th chapter of the Gita, then Krishna says that the demons are engaged in work that will lead to the destruction of the world. So we can see that how rapidly human society, the modern human society, which is, in which the Rajogun and the Tamogun have become so strong. All the advances of modern civilization are all the results of Rajogun, practically speaking, are results of Rajogun. So one of the principal characteristics of Rajogun is the law of unintended consequences. Actually, any activity according to the gunas has unintended consequences. But let's say, for instance, one is engaged in an activity in the sattva guna. In the immediate time frame, it may appear that that activity has not resulted in anything positive. The result of activities in the mode of sattva is happiness, is knowledge, is understanding, is insight. So, but the results of Rajogun and the results of Tamogun are either, with different degrees of intensity, are the results of ignorance. And that means that there are many, many unintended consequences. So when human beings started creating mechanical devices using electricity, steam engines, started extracting oil from the earth in order to, for cars and airplanes and so on. The human society made rapid advancements in a very short time. In a couple of 100 years, there was a complete transformation of human society as a result. But there were unintended consequences. No one was planning that there should be global warming, which would result in a disruption of human activities everywhere, and the potential for rather intense destruction of human habitat, and in all likelihood, a partial annihilation of the human species. As we speak, we might not think, oh, human beings are still progressing, and they're still, out to dominate the universe, out to dominate the world, and even that they will be able to counteract through their own ingenuity all the damage that's been done over the last couple of 100 years. But mostly, they talk about a couple of 100 years, to talk about 1750 as the baseline for global warming. But in actual fact, more fossil fuels have been burned in the last 20 years than in the entire centuries leading up to that. So these are all unintended consequences. Nobody was thinking, let's destroy the human species. Let's annihilate the human race. Let's put an end to this experiment. And at the same time, we have nuclear weapons, which are also, Krishna says, for the destruction of the human race. So Krishna is there. He is the actual recipient of the sacrificial shares that are given to the gods. He is the one who, he is actually Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. He is the ultimate beneficiary. He is the ultimate recipient of all sacrificial activity, not the gods. The gods are there only as his representatives. So this is why the gods can come to Krishna and ask him for protection from the demons and the Rakshasas. So Daitya Krantam Hridaya Kamalam Tad Griham Pratyabodhi. So you were our lotus-like heart. So Daitya Krantam Hridaya Kamalam, our lotus heart, Hridaya Kamalam, is Twadgriham, is your abode, is your residence. So here again, this is in the framework of or in the context of the material creation. We talk about the heart as being the abode of Krishna, because in the process of sadhana bhakti, that is considered to be Krishna's principal residence and principal. This is where we meditate on Krishna as that his presence is here in the heart. So here he says but that was, and here also when Indra says this, is Hridaya Kamalam. This includes Swargaloka. This is his own, this is his Twadgriham. This is also Krishna's abode. Right? In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it talks about Vamana having his residence there in Swarga. So although he doesn't mix, let's say, with the gods, he's Indra's younger brother, and so he has dealings with Aditi and Indra's parents. But nevertheless, he doesn't hang out with Indra in an informal or an intimate way. So it was taken over by Hiranyakashipu, our lotus-like heart, which is your abode, and which was taken possession of by this asura, has been made to blossom by you. Pratyabodhi. So Pratyabodhi means awakened again. You've awakened it again. So our hearts, your home, was taken over by Hiranyakashipu, so therefore we were suffering. And also in the same way, you were suffering, right? Because in the Gita also Krishna says, if you make yourself and me suffer. Is that para deheshu? I have a Gita out here. Let's see the Gita. Here we go. This is also 16th chapter, right? So it looks like since we're talking the 16th chapter here. So 16th chapter, getting close to the end here. Ahankaram, balam, darpam. Right, we got this share. Stop share. Just to see I got the right share. Whoops, let me just want to make sure I get the right share here. All right, so here, verse 18. Ahankaram, balam, darpam, kamam, krodham, cha sangshritaha, mam atma paradeheshu pradvishanto vyasuyakaha. So these are the qualities that they take shelter of. Ego, strength, hypocrisy, lust, anger. So these are the things that they take shelter of. And we take shelter of Krishna. We take refuge in Krishna. But these guys, the asuras, they take refuge in their ego. When Donald Trump first came onto the scene in America, then immediately I saw all these things that this was a description, a very good description of Trump. And so I thought that, this is a very dangerous man, because that was what we had right here. Yeah, this is what we were talking about. That prabhavantyugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hita. Now, asatyam apratishtam te jagadahur anishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kamahaitukam etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmanolpa buddhayaha prabhavantyugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha. Right? So etam drishtim, this idea that the world is not true, that it has no basis. Just think, apratishtam. Our modern scientists, especially the neo-atheists, they want to say that the world has no pratishta. It has no basis. They don't want to accept the idea of a God who is the ground of being, the ultimate ground of being. And because of that, they say the world has no God. And it's only come about by aparaspara sambhutam. It's come about through the interaction of events, interaction of the qualities of, just exactly what the scientists say. It comes about by evolution. So aparaspara sambhutam, that means it's evolved from nothing. A very strange idea that when we have in the beginning of all scientific knowledge, that we start with Newton and the conservation of energy, that energy is never lost. So, but somehow or another, the universe began from nothing. There was nothing there. And if they say, yes, there was something there and it just simply changed form, well, that's okay. Still needs someone to set it into motion, the prime mover. So all these things were spoken by sages and philosophers since time immemorial, who came to the conclusion that there was a God. And now modern science has so increased human hubris that they don't think that there is any power higher than man himself. And this was the Enlightenment, of course. The Western Enlightenment they say that it began with the Renaissance in Western Europe, that man is the measure of all things. This was the defining inspiration of the Renaissance, and ultimately led to what we call the Enlightenment in Western history. So when etam drishtim, so he says kimanyat kama haitukam, its only purpose is the fulfillment of desires. So in that they're correct. This world is here, it exists for us to fulfill our desires. Krishna has given us this playground. But if we have that vision and we don't see in the context of the other purpose, right? Even in Sankhya philosophy, there it says that Prakriti has two purposes. So the Purusha, he acts for Swartha, but Prakriti acts Parartha. So the Prakriti only has its function for the sake of the conscious being. And the material world is especially for the sake of the individual cosmic, individual jiva, the individual conscious being, the jiva. So the Prakriti exists for the sake of the jiva, but the jiva exists for himself. In other words, the jiva exists to attain either liberation or bhoga. So those are the two things, mukti and bhukti. Those are the two things that the material world provides. That's what nature provides to the jiva. So one is called bhoga and the other one is called apavarga. So we're talking about apavarga, liberation from the material condition. So Prakriti serves the jiva by either giving him experience, by giving him worldly experience. So worldly experience doesn't just mean good, right? He's looking for good stuff. But the law of unintended consequences means that even while seeking happiness, one experiences distress. or suffering in some way. That there's always a payoff in the material world for pleasures that are achieved through rajas and tamas. The pleasures of sattva guna do not have that kind of consequence. But the pleasures of sattva guna are also considered material. They're not liberating, although they can lead one on the path of liberation. And generally speaking, it's people who are on the path of liberation that are situated in the sattva guna. Because why would, if you didn't have some spiritual dimension to your life's activities, if you weren't engaged in some kind of sadhana, then it would be impossible to be situated in the sattva guna. So here it says that asatyam apratishtam te jagadahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. The only purpose of this world is therefore nothing other than to enjoy oneself, to experience the world. So therefore he says etam drishtim avashtabhya. So taking this particular view of the world, drishtim here, this view of the world. Nashtatmano alpabuddhya, they've destroyed themselves. They have no sense of who they really are. They're completely bewildered by their material identity. And they have less intelligence, alpabuddhi. They have less intelligence because as soon as you deny the fundamental ground of all being, namely God, then anything that it's like Bhaktivedanta Swami used to say, everything is a zero. But if you have knowledge of God and devotion to God, it's like putting a one in front of all the zeros. So everything without God is worthless, is incomplete, is unsatisfying. Without bhakti, one is inevitably going to come to the moment of death in the knowledge that he has not completed his or her purpose in being a human being in this world. So therefore he says, Prabhavanti ugra karmanaha. So they take up wicked deeds, ugra, horrible, terrifying, destructive activities by which kshayaya jagato hitaha. So having no sense of welfare of the world, and they are simply engaged in the process of destroying it. So at the end then then it goes into a rather long speech here of the way that a demoniac person thinks. Idam adya maya labdham idam prapsye manoratham idam asti idam api me bhavishyati punardhanam. So I have gained this much wealth today, and I will fulfill my desires tomorrow. This is, and there will be even more wealth in the future. I have killed my enemy, and I will kill the other ones also. I am God. I am the master. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect. I am powerful, and I am happy. I am rich. I am noble. Who is equal to me? I will perform sacrifices. I will give in charity, and I will enjoy myself. So this is the way that they are bewildered by ignorance. So just the other the last one here, which was what we were led to. So just a bit after this speech, which I call the speech of Donald Trump, right? Ishvaro ham aham bhogi. So here, ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samsritaha mam atma paradeheshu. So this is the line I was actually looking for. Right? Pradvishanto vyasuyaka. So they're envious and they're hateful. They're inimical to me, who am situated in their own body and in other people's bodies. Right? So if in their hatred of God and if their enviousness of God, they uh, they cause they engage in activities that are hateful towards their own body and to the bodies of others. So although it's Krishna who they ultimately hate, it's Bhagavan who they ultimately hate, it's Bhagavan whom they deny. But in order to hurt Bhagavan, they can't hurt him directly. So they hurt him through doing things to their own body and to the bodies of other people that cause suffering. So the demons are engaged in suffering to themselves. I think, I hate to keep talking about Donald Trump because but he just seems to, have embodied this character. So one of the things they make fun of with him is the way that he is always eating fast food, eating hamburgers from the hamburger shop, like that. And even when the winners of a trophy in America, when the winners of the big sports trophies, when the champions, they're usually invited to the White House to meet with the prime minister, with the president. So what Trump did, he had, instead of having a nice meal for them, he ordered French fries and hamburgers for all the champion. I think it was the March Madness, the college basketball players. Anyway, the point is that in the desire to cause suffering to God, whom they don't even know, right? They don't even realize that it's God that they want to suffer. But nevertheless, by engaging in hateful activities to other human beings, that is the way they show evidence of their hatred of God. So that's the situation of the demons. So he says, Daityakrantam hridaya kamalam twadgriham pratyabodhi. So when Hiranyakashipu symbolically took over the residence of Indra and took over the heart of the devotees, then the devotees were like in a situation, a comatose situation. They needed to be reawakened. So when Nrsimha killed Hiranyakashipu, then they were all brought back to life, and their home, the heart. Sorry. All right. So here we translated Pratyabodhi has been made to blossom by you, because you can't really say griham, you can't really awaken it. So what value? Kala grastam kiyadidam aho natha. So idam. So idam here is referring to twadgriham. So kala grastam kiyadidam aho. This idam, this world. Usually when we say idam without any further information, it means this world. So this world is kalagrastam, is swallowed by time. What use is this kingdom here? What is use is this world? So for Indra, he means Swarga, but it extends beyond that. In actual fact, Indra is showing, what the two dimensions of bhakti. So we already mentioned, right? So the serving God in this world is also bhakti, but it's Paramatma bhakti. Bhagavad Bhakti is transcendental. Bhagavad Bhakti is direct participation in Krishna's Leela and service to Krishna in his Swayam Rupa, in his original form in Goloka Vrindavan. So what value is this kingdom which will be devoured by time? Kala grastam. Kiyadidam. Kiyat means how, what value? Kiyat, to what extent? How great, how much is it worth? This world. Oho Natha, O Lord, for us who, here now the word shushrusha. So shushrusha is a bit of a difficult word because it has a double meaning. Right? Shushrusha means the desire to hear, the desire to listen. So in the second verse of the Bhagavatam, where it says, that what is it again? That dharma projita kaita votra paramo nirmatsaranang satam vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam tapotrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parair Ishvaraha Sadyo Hridyavarudyate Takritivi Shushrushuvis Tatkshanat. So the other word is Shushrushu, one who desires to hear. So in the case of the case of the Bhagavatam, there the meaning was that those who desire to hear the Bhagavatam. So what's the use of any other text? If one has the Bhagavatam, then one has no need to go looking anywhere else. That's what's stated in the second verse of Bhagavatam. So near here, Shushrushatam, Shushrushatam, so Shashti, it's a genitive plural, Shashti Vibhakti Bahuvacha. So for us who are engaged in serving you, so how much is this world worth for those of us who are serving you, who desire to serve you? Right? Because the word to wish to serve. So how does that come about? How do you end up with the wish to serve? I mean, the wish to hear, meaning to serve. Right? So if I want to serve, then I will be listening carefully to what you say so that I know what you want me to do. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if I want to hear from you, then I will serve you. If I want to hear from the Guru, I need to serve him. So in a way, my desire to serve is connected to my desire to hear. So service, so the word desire to hear and the word for service are synonymous. It's an interesting word. So shushrusha, shushrushatang naha te. So here shushrushatang refers to naha, right here. Right? See the naha up here? Naha means asman, asman. So shushrushatam means asmakam shushrushatam. Or asmakam swabhaga. So I don't think that means, I think that swabhaga means our shares. I think that should be our shares. Because it doesn't say nach swabhaga. And so then here's shushrushatam. So I think that naha here should be taken as asmakam. Naha can be either the accusative or the dative or the genitive. So it's three possibilities that are there. So here he's taking naha swabhaga. He's taking I think that naha goes with swabhaga, means our shares. So let's see, we'll go to the end. So what valuable is this kingdom which will be devoured by time for those who are engaged in your service? They do not value even mukti, O Narasingha. So what interest could they have for other objects? So muktis tesham sushrushatam. So tesham sushrushatam nahi bahumata muktihi. So mukti is not thought of very highly by them. They do not value even mukti. What to speak of anything else? So what to speak of any aparai, anything else? So what interest could they have for other objects? So in the previous Anuchedas, Sri Jiva Goswami has referred to great devotees like Prahlad, Prithu, and Bharata. They all knew the greatness of bhakti and had no attachment to kingdom, wealth, or relatives. Indra is the opposite of that. He is seldom counted among the great devotees and is generally portrayed as being quite attached to his post and to the comforts and enjoyments that go with it. Yet, so generally speaking, I think that if you think of the gods, we can see that this is extrapolated, whether or not did Did the authors of the scripture actually know gods and see the gods in the higher planets? No, they extrapolated. They saw that in this world, now you take a person like a rich person. Let's say now the two, some of the rich people in the world who are making a lot of noise and so on. Someone like Jeff Bezos, for instance. So Jeff Bezos has an incredible, immense amount of money, and almost beyond the imagination of an ordinary person who struggles from day to day just to feed himself and his family, right? So such a person is like a god. There was a famous statement, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was writing in the 1920s during at the end of the previous Gilded Age in Western history, the Gilded Age, the age of the robber barons. So when the age of the great industrialists and the great capitalists of early 20th century America. So this had reached its culmination point. So there, the great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald, was someone who chronicled the lives of the rich and famous in this period. So one of the famous quotes that he said, the rich are not like us. So even though it sounds like this, the rich are not like us. The rich people are not like us. They live in a different dimension of life, because they're enjoying, in a way, they have freedom from anxieties in a way, and they have enjoyments available to them that are beyond the imagination of ordinary people. And this is why there's a divide between the upper classes and the middle classes, because the upper classes, they're living in a different dimension of reality due to the power and wealth that they can claim. And at the same time, there are demons, so the asuras, so you have rich asuras also. But the asuras are always in anxiety because they're always engaged in sinful activity. And their riches and wealth are all the results of sin, of wicked deeds, of causing pain to others, right? So paropakara punyaya papaya parapidanam. They're engaged in sin because they cause others to suffer. At least a Rajasic person pretends to be giving some value in exchange for the wealth that he takes. So he may give you something totally useless and charge you excessive amounts of money for it, but at least he will advertise and glorify the object of sale that he's selling to you, so that in the end you think, oh, I've paid money, good money for a good thing. All right, so Indra is nevertheless, as we already said, he is not counted amongst the great devotees and is generally portrayed as being quite attached to his post and to the benefits that accrue thereto. Yet, he also understands the difference between bhakti and mukti. So bhakti to the Paramatma is also better than mukti. That's also the point that is being stated here. Even, now we're talking, this book is called Priti Sandarbha. So Indra is hardly our ideal. We are looking at the gopis. That's where we're headed. We're not headed to Indra Loka, not by any means possible. Nevertheless, it is important to understand Paramatma as an interim step between Brahma and Paramatma. Most people, when they talk about God, are talking about Paramatma. When they talk about service to God, they're talking about service to this world, service to humanity, or in some other way, trying to find a way of serving God in relationship to our existential situation within the material world, our bondage, the goal being salvation. So as a guardian of the worlds, in other words, a Lokapala, Indra does valuable service to Bhagavan. I think I would change this to Paramatma also. And would not like to trade it with for Mukti because there is no service there. So even service within the context of the material world is still better than Mukti. There are different kinds of service to Bhagavan. The gods or devas render service within this universe, so they do not have the kind of direct service that his associates have in the eternal abode. Nevertheless, even this service is superior to liberation, and a person who selflessly renders service at this level of knowledge is still situated in a state superior to Mukti. All right, so that's Anuchhed 29. I think that's enough for that. Let's read the verse one more time. Pratyanitaha parama bhavata trayata naksvabhaga daitya-krantam hridaya kamalam twadgriham pratyabodhi kalagrastam kiyadidam aho natha susrushatang te muktis teshang nahi bahumata narasingha paraikim. Nice verse. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayah sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet purnam madah purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate purnasya purnam adaya purnam evavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe Shyam. Jai Jai Ni, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Shyam Sundar Madanna Mohan Vrindavana Chandra, Jai Jai Radha Ramana Rasvihari, Shri Gokulananda, Jai Jai Radha Kanta Radha Vinod, Shri Radha Govinda, Jai Jai Raseshwari Vinodini, Bhanukula Chandra, Jai Jai Lalita Vishakha Adi, Jato Saki Vrinda, Jai Jai Sri Rupa Manjari Adi, Manjari Ananga, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kundalata, Jaya Vira Vrinda, Tomra Kripa Kori Deo He Jugal, Charanara Vinda Deho Jugal, Charanara Vinda Deho Jugal, चरणारविंद देह जुगल चरणारविंद जय जय राधे कृष्ण गोविंद जय जय राधे कृष्ण गोविंद राधे गोविंद राधे गोविंद राधे गोविंद राधे गोविंद राधे गोविंद राधे गोविंद जय जय राधे कृष्ण गोविंद जय जय राधे कृष्ण गोविंद राधे कृष्ण गोविंद जय जय श्री गुरु चरणारविंद की जय जय श्री श्री जीव गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय 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 सर गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय 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 सत्संदर्भ की जय जय श्री प्रीति संदर्भ की जय 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 अनंत जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास रघुनाथ सर गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय 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 जमुना मई की जय 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 तुलसी देवी की जय 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 गौमाता की जय 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 श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की जय 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 श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल।